Welcome to the future. Welcome to BTC, the tubers, in this pre-halving program. Today, April 10th, 2024. We are just a few days away, just a few hours away. I would say blocks to be mined for one of the happiest events in the ecosystem that all of you and us too have been waiting for. Well, for almost 4 years now. We've previously shared a compilation video. Jose shared it with us of how we celebrated the previous halving that took place on May 12th, 2020, and honestly, it gives you goosebumps, and the time that has passed is super fast with all the events. Happenings that you already know. Today we're going to do a special event or program pre-halving. We give it so much importance that we don't want to just stay in the program of the day, but we want to share with different people from the team who will accompany us to give their opinion, their vision, what they expect. Let's perform a small analysis of various graphs on how the historical moments we have encountered before previous halvings can have an impact. And for that, we have VIP guests. Giovanni, who never fails, obviously, and who is also at an event in the Metaguoda Congrega.
Hey, what's up, Hobby?
Hey, people here, honestly, amazing. They have great speakers. I was here this morning, and some Batimaros also came to greet. So if anyone is nearby, inform us, and maybe they can also join our spam. Well, there you have it. The DeLorean at the Madrid ship in Villaverde. The event will also be tomorrow all day, so greetings to all of you who have come by the community over there, and to all of you who are watching live and seeing it. It's also a pleasure to have you with us. And besides Giovanni, we have Juan Fornell, who is a product manager at BB.
Hey, Juan. How you?
Hello, howdy. Well, pleased to be here with y'all. I hadn't shown up in any of the live streams for a while, but it's a good time to come here and talk to you about one of the events as important as the Bitcoin halving or this pre-halving that is going to happen in a few days, just a week away.
Yep, nice to meet.
Well, looking forward to hearing from you, Juan, because I'm sure you also have some ideas and concepts in mind that it's always good to have different people with different perspectives to give us a more complete vision. And we also have Nacho with us, the content director at BB.
Hey, Nato. How you?
From around here.
Hey, Javier. How are? Well, here we are too, also in the ship, because I came here for the event. I am in a different room from the one Giovanni is in with the people and nothing. It is a pleasure to participate in this live stream pre-halving, and with a little bit of nerves, we are already witnessing the horizon unfolding before us.
I mentioned it in a tweet. I think the halving in the next generations, within 10, 15, 20 years, will be as important or even more than what happens every 4 years or so. We'll talk about it in more detail later, even the New Year's celebration, which is a special event. I believe that when adoption and traction are gained, and in all countries Bitcoin becomes a standard, we'll celebrate it as something tremendous. And now we're experiencing this fifth halving, fourth this how many halving, which is great. It's very special. So let's get started because we've prepared a report. First of all, let me tell you, Nacho, we made a post from BitMe today. If you all want, let us do an introduction because perhaps there are individuals who are acquainted with it, with everything that this event of dividing half of the Bitcoin signifies that they are going to provide as a reward. But I'd like you to develop it, make an intro if you want Nacho, and then focus on it if you want Giovanni, of course. Anyone want to join?
Let us know.
All right. So the idea is that when we gather in the marketing department to brainstorm what we could do for the halving, besides the promotions that are already being published on the blog and sent to users via email, we thought, well, we could create a report to lay the groundwork for informing and educating people about the halving, explaining what the halving is all about. This report would provide valuable insights and ensure that users have a comprehensive understanding of the significance and implications of the halving event. So, well, since at BB we don't like to do things in a small way, we say, well, let's invite people here who know about this and who are also partners of BME in some way. So in this report that has almost 30 pages, which you can download for free, well, we have published it on LinkedIn, on social media, on the blog, in a bunch of places. Well, so we count on the collaboration of Yaisa Rubio, for example, from Telefonica, also with the collaboration of BBVA Switzerland, which is the private banking part. But it's still a bank that catches your attention to participate in something like this. When it comes to Bitcoin, we also have BitMe later on. We really appreciate the emphasis on security, you know. We've had the opportunity to work with Ledger and Haken, and earlier today at the event, we had the pleasure of meeting Pablo Gil, a trader and financial educator. Additionally, we were joined by representatives from BME, including yourself, Javi, who are featured on one of the pages with Lays, and Abel Pena, our sales director. Furthermore, I have contributed some content as well because, as you know, if I am coordinating, I also write. So overall, it has been a productive and engaging experience for us. And well, the truth is that in this report, what we do is we break down from the most basic of what the Bitcoin halving is to, well, a little bit about the implications it has within the whole Bitcoin landscape, cryptocurrencies, what has happened in other halvings that have already occurred, the economic effects that can happen, how it affects money, well, a lot of things, and so on and so forth, and provide a comprehensive analysis of the topic.
On screen, Naruto, it's complete with graphics, as you said, right? That index with the opinions of all the people who have participated, you have it as he comments to download it directly and take a look with all the time you need. Thanks to the content team, Nacho, for the inspiring work that has motivated and influenced you all. I think it's worth it.
Yes, you guys for participating, also to you. To all of you who have participated and also contribute a lot, Manola and tremendous value.
In the end, it's a good thing that not everyone has to maybe have the same vision, but that in the sum of all the opinions of many people in the end makes you have a picture, a fixed frame of what the context is, of what are the important events to take into account. For you, Juan, I think it's a special event. You've been in Big Du Mexicano for quite some time. How would you explain it? How would you tell your friends, your family about the upcoming halving event? What really strikes me is that I have acquaintances who are approaching Bitcoin for the first time, and on occasion, they are unaware of this fact, and that truly captures my attention. It is of utmost importance to be aware of its existence and comprehend its implications, especially considering the significant impact it can have on their financial future. In the end, Bitcoin, one of its most important characteristics is that it has a limited supply, and the mechanism in which that issuance is regulated is the mechanism we know as halving, which consists of reducing the issuance by half every 4 years of Bitcoin that enter the market. The Bitcoins that enter the market are the rewards that are given to miners for their participation and for providing security to the network infrastructure. But as I mentioned, ultimately, I consistently prefer to clarify it as resembling a clock, where the quantity of newly generated Bitcoins allowed to enter the market is modified every 4 years, with the ultimate goal of reaching the predetermined limit of 21 million Bitcoins that will be mined within a few years.
Some left.
Initially skeptical as he said 45, but I got nervous. It's actually 4. 2012-201-620202024. If you guys want, Jose, I don't know if we can put a survey or Giovanni there on the YouTube channel. If any of you all who are currently watching this show have tried to explain what halving is to your circle of friends, if you have managed to do it successfully, then please let us know whether you did or did not succeed. Let's see how that survey turns out. Javi, how do you explain in a few words when they ask you about Calvin's thing in the same line? I mean, in 3 words. Well, in 3 words it's not easy, but let's give you a summary of what one said. There was a planned shortage of incentives. It's just that we consumed and sold them as per the schedule. I've done it in 3 words. Giovanni, that's what it is. Well, you didn't have it prepared properly. You were gonna get caught. You were gonna get caught. Well, let's start this presentation, if you guys are okay with it, with this question that I had as an introduction to make it a little more visual. Do we need to know what the Bitcoin halving is? Here you'll see a more visual way of understanding this. If you want, Nacho, go ahead and elaborate on this idea and we'll explain. 1, you have prepared for a big event. If you can compliment for us, we appreciate it.
Okay, then I will provide a summary using only 3 words: reduction of rewards program. So basically, well, in the report, I start talking a bit about the Greeks, about how they used to wait. They had to wait every 4 years to celebrate the Olympic Games, and it's something that continues to this day. This year, we have the Olympics in Paris 1. Not much with BTC halving, same event occurs. Every 4 years since 2008, when Bitcoin was created, this event called the Bitcoin Halloween happens, which doesn't necessarily occur exactly every 4 years, but rather when 210,000 blocks are mined. The thing is that, well, more or less, it has happened every 4 years. So, what is happening? Well, similar to almost everything, I guess nearly everyone who is listening can see a bit of it. To create a Bitcoin, there is a figure known as Bitcoin miners. These miners are the ones responsible for solving the algorithms and cryptographic challenges within the Bitcoin algorithm. As they solve these challenges, Bitcoins are created and the miners are rewarded. So, in essence, Bitcoin miners play a crucial role in the creation and operation of Bitcoins, and they receive rewards for their efforts. So these rewards, what happens is that every 4 years or every 210,000 blocks of Bitcoin, they are halved. So right now, since 2020, they are being given 6.5 Bitcoins for every mined block, and starting next week, which is when the halving is going to happen, they will be given half. They will be given 3.125. This is basically the Bitcoin halving, and then, well, it has a whole bunch more implications for the miners, who of course are going to receive less reward. But if that Bitcoin has more value per unit, in the end they will receive the same or more. That's why price fluctuation is something we'll see more or less, right, Juan? I'm not an expert.
Yeah. One of the impacts where it generates the most impact is precisely, at least until now, in mining companies, as you say, from one day to the next their income is really reduced by half if we measure it in Bitcoin. But of course, since the price then fluctuates, their income has been increasing so far. I always like the mining part. For those who are not familiar, trying to get people to see, of course, we're saying, okay, they give you Bitcoin for doing that mining function, okay, but what cost does it have for me if I'm a miner, right? Why do we say if it's cut in half, damn, if before I was earning little for each mined block at the current price of around 7 to 642, about $420,000, now it's going to be 210K. What costs should I consider? Miners take into account energy cost, equipment cost, jurisdiction, taxes imposed on them, energy type, in accordance with legislation, maintenance, including personnel managing everything for you, repairs, interventions, etc. The miner bears all costs, but how does he do it? Through the sale of the Bitcoins that are given to them as compensation. Nacho mentions something interesting. 1, we can clarify that he said there are about 210,000 blocks, typically equals to about 4 years in duration. Some say, damn, the last halving I recall was, people may not recall, but I do, it was on May 2nd, 2020. Why is it now in a week? What causes it to vary and not be exactly 4 years, but rather be referenced to those 200,000 blocks? And the tip varies, and we could explain that a little bit. All right, What really sets the date is, as it says, the blocks, it's 210,000 blocks.
What is up?
Each block takes approximately 10 minutes to be mined. So sometimes there are spikes where the power of the network has a high peak in which it increases or decreases, and this can affect the mining times of certain blocks. And this throughout all that time in which they are happening drifts into that it may affect that the date is not exactly 4 years.
For a duration of 4 years, correct.
There's an event that you probably heard, which is a difficulty adjustment in the mining network. Every 2016 mined blocks the system, does like a reset, and it's dynamic. So what Juan is saying, if it has taken less time to mine, what the system does is become more difficult and increase the difficulty, so it's a time that adjusts every 2 weeks or so.
Roughly.
Listen, we can proceed if you want with the next slide. There's more content, Jose, and we would discuss these concepts, which represent a cyclical event. Until when, Nacho, do we have halvings, and what is the percentage of Bitcoin that will be issued to the network, and when will almost all of them be issued? Since we know there are about 19.6 million in circulation, can you tell us about here and beyond? What can we also anticipate in that programming that the system possesses?
Yeah, let's see. It's planned. Let's take a look. One of the components that were incorporated into this Bitcoin algorithm at that time was the issue of reward reduction, because if its presence continued for a total of 8 years, all the Bitcoins would have been distributed because, well, you are aware that what's advantageous about Bitcoin in comparison to fiat money is that there's a total of 21 million Bitcoins in existence, ensuring a limited supply of this digital currency. There will be a total of 21 million Bitcoins, period. They ain't gonna develop no more. So, what's up? If they didn't establish rules in 8 years, from 2008 to 2016, these 21 million Bitcoins would already be fully distributed. So what is created is kind of like putting on the brakes a little bit. In this way, there will be, let's say, Bitcoin will be created until the year, I think 2140 really, which is when the last ones will be mined. But let's say I think I don't have the info. Now I'll check it, but I think in the last 20 years, what's mined is nothing. 0.0, very little.
Listen, I reckon that in the past 32 years of mining, just 1 Bitcoin will be mined.
Okay, that was it.
Crazy.
You're aware, in the event that I pose a query, that also serves as a partial response, offering a small degree of insight. People also ask, hey, why isn't the date or time of the halving exact? Many people wonder, why is it always changing? What is the real one? That would provide an explanation as to why it is similar to a mine.
Cool.
That's what they do, so we can do several programs, Giovanni, many times. No, let's see. It's what we talked about earlier. Difficulty adjustment causing variation. Because when it updates every 2 weeks, the system has to start a new countdown with a difficulty that, well, makes the times can vary. I mean, we don't know now, but giving it a week, 10 days, the exact time of the halving. We still don't have that information, but hey, it'll come.
We adore not knowing.
Because it's more fun, you know. Let's see. There what we discussed. About 1,000 blocks left to mine, if I'm not mistaken. So, well, I remember in 2020, we did like a countdown of a block during the show. Those blocks were being mined, and we could see it live. I found it interesting. One, you have mentioned to us previously the show that you have some interesting historical issues that perhaps are not so well known, not so widely spread, but that the community might find interesting.
If you want to share.
Yeah, if all of you want, we can proceed and move on to the next slide where you can observe the evolution of Bitcoin's price throughout its entire history And you can see there the moments when the previous halving episodes have occurred up until the present time. And yes, I enjoyed observing a small portion in perspective to comprehend the occurrences that took place during each of those halvings in order to understand, well, the exact moment it happened. In the majority of cases, there were challenges or a sense of uncertainty that arose when the halvings occurred. And to put it above all, to put it in context, more than little-known facts, they are the opposite. They are well-known facts that when we see how many years ago they occurred, well, they are going to catch our attention quite a bit. Yeah, so essentially, when we examine the price of Bitcoin subsequent to each halving event, we observe a highly comparable pattern in which there is a period characterized by bullish sentiment, followed by a correction, and then a subsequent phase of accumulation leading up to the next halving occurrence. We don't know what's going to happen in this and future halvings, but it is true that in the halvings that have occurred so far, that has been fulfilled. So, if we proceed to the next one, we can observe the position of Bitcoin at the time when the initial halving occurred in 2012. Only a few individuals were aware of this during that specific period of time because the actual occurrence that transpired was that Bitcoin, in its early stages, had recognition within a small circle of people who were primarily focused on technology, cryptography, cybersecurity, and distributed systems. However, in general, technical individuals were the ones who possessed the most knowledge about this new innovation in general, and in the realm of technology. And what occurred when this initial halving took place was that there was such a remarkable rally in the price. It went from less than $10 to the figure we see out there, which was above 1,000, which caught the attention of individuals who thought they could speculate with this new kind of asset, individuals who were attracted primarily by its philosophy, not only to make money, but also to entrepreneurs who saw this as an opportunity to provide various types of services and businesses around. This technology, thus creating a thriving ecosystem of innovation and economic growth. It was in the year 2012 when one of the companies that is now widely recognized as Coinbase was established. It also began to be traded on Box, which was an exchange where numerous individuals purchased and sold Bitcoin, which I believe was 2 years subsequent, experienced one of the most significant hacks in history. And well, ultimately, it was the moment when Bitcoin made a transition from being something unknown, something known only by a limited number of individuals. Then, as I said, in all the halvings that correction and accumulation period has occurred. This brought us to the next halving that took place in 2016. This one I do remember much clearer because it was precisely when I met him and when I really fell in love with this technology. I definitely came attracted by the price, but I stayed for the principles, and since then I have always been connected to the world of Christ, to Bitcoin, mainly for the world of Christ in general. And at the time when this halving event took place, Bitcoin was already listed on a multitude of platforms, and there were already a considerable number of people who were aware of it and had the knowledge to speculate, buy, sell, accumulate, and hold. There was a significant amount of interest and participation from a large number of individuals in the market. But what did happen and that generated at the time, maybe we have already forgotten a lot of uncertainty, was a division within the Bitcoin community in which there were two large groups, one advocating for making changes to the protocol and increasing the size of the block of information stored there, and others who did not want to. What happened with Bitcoin Cash? One indeed. What happened was that they didn't reach an agreement, and as a result, Bitcoin was going to split into several Bitcoins. I'm telling you, that was a moment of a lot of uncertainty. I remember that. I was kind of negative, I thought. I had a lot of doubts about whether Bitcoin was going to survive that moment, and not only did it survive, but as we see later, it had another bullish rally. Bitcoin Cash still exists today, but the original version of Bitcoin persevered, which is the one everyone knows right now. And Bitcoin, wow, at that moment it reached a sky-high price. I think it was its peak in January 2018. One aligns with the question Varela asks. He says, what's the halving? And when it arrives, does the value of Bitcoin go up or down?
He is first. What occurred?
Typically, up until this point, the price has initially decreased. Well, there isn't much of a story to say for sure what happened. We've had 3 previous ones, and now we have this 4th one. Initially, it decreased, but many factors impact it. As I mentioned, the uncertainty about changes, potential protocol changes, divisions in different Bitcoins. The first halving, well, since so few people know about it, it's very difficult to draw any conclusion from there that I could have. One, I would say, let's see. On the screen, what you obviously have is the price chart since the day the halving occurred in 2016, which is that big blue box you see in the center and at the bottom left peak, on the date that appears below, which is Monday, June 13th. 2016, the halving occurred, as Juan comments. Yes, it is true that after that halving, we will do the next one. There was a correction. You see those red candles there. But on December 11th, 2017, which were more or less like 78 weekly bars, those little green and red bars, which you see are a week of trading. Well, what we saw is that after the halving, after this reduction that Nacho and Juan have explained, the trend in a year and a half view, well, it is of significant growth, right? I wanted to clarify this a bit, one, because maybe the graph, let's see, that chart is indeed taken from the halving date, right? But in case someone hadn't considered it, yeah, that's what really happened. If the demand keeps up, then Bitcoin would double in value.
Sup?
What it is that in prior episodes, the demand hasn't just been maintained, but it has actually increased, which has led to that exponential growth that we really see in the graph. Question that maybe generated some confusion. Look, says Jose Maria, says, and how will the halving affect Bitcoin Cash? Well, let's see if you guys want me to answer. All right, Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin are 2 separate protocols, you know? Yes, it's true that one statement had the same origin in 2017. A conflict arose among developers and the community, resulting in the creation of 2 currencies, Bitcoin, the one you see, and Bitcoin Cash. If you guys take a look at Bitcoin Cash, let me tell you what I see, right? It's important, among other things, for the security of a cryptocurrency, the level of computing, the level of hash of the mining network, that they're doing that work to be rewarded. And in the case of BCH compared to BTC, well, it's literally, even though BCH fans won't like it, it's on the floor. I mean, if we compare one with the other. So I think you guys have to consider this. The market has been choosing one of the protocols based on security.
I think it is the...
That's why he chooses the market for Bitcoin, not Bitcoin Cash. And we haven't brought up the behavior it has had, but if you compare the price chart of Bitcoin against Bitcoin Cash, you'll also see that Bitcoin has far surpassed the other cryptocurrency in value.
There isn't much to mention regarding the topic you are discussing, just a brief mention of how scavenging impacts the price of Bitcoin and similar subjects. The report includes a section where Pablo Gilbert specifically addresses this, providing an explanation of the stages involved. First, there's a bull market with an exponential movement. Then there's a corrective phase where Bytra ultimately corrects its value. Then there's another accumulation phase, and then another bullish phase.
Let's see this data, as we say, we can analyze the past and its behavior. I believe we are in an entirely different ballgame when it comes to the overall perspective. If you want, Jose, we'll put up the next graph, which is the last cycle that many of you who are in this live stream have already experienced since the day we were locked up because of the pandemic. Y'all see there in the year 2020 a red candle that's real aggressive. All right. So 2 months later, in May, March, April, May, The halving occurred, which is that blue box, and there you can see the all-time high that we reached at around $69,000 towards the end of 2021. On February 1st of November, well, a similar process to the previous cycle repeated itself, not with such a significant percentage increase, but it did happen. So, well, we can make predictions based on what Pablo Gil was saying in the report. It's not investment advice, but history tells us that when there's a reduction in the supply of new Bitcoins entering the market, if the demand from people wanting to buy it remains, and in this case we have the famous US ETFs, well, it's normal to expect some behavior. How have you guys been living this last cycle, Juan? Were you expecting a little more price, less? Did you all see it more or less how it went? Or, well, how did you see it before? I'm curious to know your perspective on this matter. I do not have a vivid recollection of a substantial expectation for a price increase during the halving or prior to the halving, precisely because of the event you mentioned, COVID-19, which, well, we have somewhat forgotten about. But at that time it generated a considerable amount of uncertainty. Nevertheless, Bitcoin made a recovery and performed well. Throughout that bullish cycle, I did possess the anticipation that the price might have even attained a higher level, however, solely due to the fact that it had two peaks, and it was during that second peak that I anticipated it would exceed those maximum levels if it had indeed reached them once more. However, it ultimately did not do so. Ultimately, it is extremely difficult to determine the future actions of the market. Nacho, what was your perspective on this matter? Have we experienced a correction where this is what people are asking? Says, okay, we've gone through 4 or 3 cycles, we've had historical highs and such, and there's been a 70% correction as we experienced it, right? From the peak in November to the bottom of the US stock market crash, it was $15,000. How do you foresee the next one going? I don't know if Jose wants us to put the next slide, and then Nacho can also comment on the forecast.
Certainly. The fact is that ultimately it is true that playing indoors is heavenly because it is a game we can play here as a group of buddies. But we lack knowledge about the potential effects and long-term impact of this jelp on our well-being and overall health. The things we can say, the things we can know are that, let's say, the context has changed. For example, in 2020, it's true we were in a pandemic and the recovery that followed with the price. Well, there was also a recovery in the overall economy, but that's because the economy went up during those months. Now the context has changed.
Well, this is exactly what we're talking about. I don't know how you guys see the distribution. Juan, how do you see that? The trends that Satoshi has, the estimation of lost BTC, what the ETFs have, the governments, and all that. What captures my attention, what undoubtedly everyone will see is that the majority is present in that which appears as individuals to the naked eye. Typically, speculative assets do not experience additional growth like other types of assets. However, with Bitcoin, there is a possibility that the funds section can grow significantly, although it is distinct from other assets in this regard. But hey, it makes perfect sense given how Bitcoin was born and how it has been growing up until now. But what I would think is personal opinion is that what this distribution reflects is that it was in a very early stage of Bitcoin as an asset. Actually, look, one thing Jose Maria says if he knows if you can invest in EU ETFs. One thing I would say is crucial is that once you have exchange-traded funds, you cannot even utilize Bitcoin to make a payment for something or purchase something with that Bitcoin. That is, you can buy it and sell it and that's it. Because another user tells him that he could buy it, for example, Bitcoin on BB referring to the ETF and Bitcoin. Let's see, that's a vital note with ETFs, never be in Europe, in the US. Wherever you are, you're never going to have access to those Bitcoins by buying them on BitMe. If you want, you can have access and keep them yourselves. option won't provide ETF. If crucial, consider. Inform Nacho about distribution.
Well, in relation to this that I'm reading, I'm also reading that the London Stock Exchange is going to accept ETNs, which is a pretty similar figure. And in Hong Kong, I was also reading that they are going to start moving this type of financial instruments. So we can say that in terms of adoption, especially if we've seen what has happened in the US, if this is really going to keep happening, it's going to keep replicating in other jurisdictions, in other financial areas, well, that's also something to keep in mind. I was saying that I felt sorry about the issue of estimating lost Bitcoins.
It's just that in the end, there are like 700,000 Bitcoins there, which I would really like and Nacho, if you don't mind, because you have highlighted the issue of estimating the lost Bitcoins from those 3.7 million that are calculated if there are between the two. One, Nacho, can you explain why someone unfamiliar with Bitcoin might say they've lost, not here if they hear us? Just to clarify that portion a little bit, okay, Juan, if you want clarification. All right, with Bitcoin, as Javier says, you cannot lose, because they actually do exist. What you can definitely lose are the access keys to that Bitcoin. So, at the moment when a user loses the password, well, if they had it written down somewhere, those Bitcoins won't be able to be accessed anymore, and therefore they would be considered lost. And well, this is an example, but that situation can occur in multiple ways. They can send to an address where you make a mistake when entering those characters or in that type of situation, but in the end, it ultimately means losing access to those Bitcoins.
I would like to clarify something. Yes, it is indeed possible to lose them, and well, the reason for this is an anecdote that has now reminded me of a man in Newport, located in Wales, who mined a total of 7,500 Bitcoins, placed them on a hard drive, and because he knew what was inside that hard drive, well, he ultimately decided to discard it. So this hard drive ended up in a landfill, and well, now of course, this is where those Bitcoins were worth over 315 million euros. So obviously, the guy's mission in life right now is to find the hard drive in that place, no matter what. And nothing, they were there rummaging through the trash to see if they found it. What is an anecdote, correct? However, this is hardcore material regarding your forgiveness, your Bitcoins in your cold wallet, and ultimately, of course, in fact, when they make reference to the private keys multiple times, one method to express it, for instance, is the treasure map.
Losing the map means losing the Bitcoins and the treasure. It's like losing everything. It's a simple way of saying it. It's a good way to look at it. I had never explained it like that, but I agree with Ivani, because what I always say is like when the ships went to America. They brought back gold and silver, and suddenly halfway there was a battle with pirates, and that ship with all the treasure would sink to the bottom of the sea. They would go there to the bottom of the ocean. Well, obviously that gold and silver still existed because they are still physically present, but they are no longer in circulation. And it's what happens with Bitcoin. Estimated owners lost the keys. As Juan also said, they won't be able to move it anymore. They can no longer move it.
Hey man, greet.
Also find interesting what we were talking about earlier. Greetings to whole BB team. Yes, definitely.
A hug. Thank you very much.
We are presently here with the community, so we have not had enough time to inform you about what an incredible success it has been. You have all, let's move excited, eager for more.
I loved it.
Every day you're more awesome.
Unreal. Thanks.
Thanks a ton, but I'm actually heading to Colorado for my trip.
Damn.
We have the Bitcoins to mine, which are around 1,380,000. If you notice, it's a small amount. There's something people usually say about sex. I don't know what you think. Nacho, Juan, Giovanni, is that now these funds have entered, they control more or -850k BTC, updated from last week. They'll manipulate the price. How do you guys see it? Will they have that power with the remaining Bitcoins to mine and the funds they have? Why do we see that the true power lies with people, right? There it is.
And in fact, I firmly believe that the remaining 1.5 million Bitcoins to be mined should be primarily allocated to individuals, as that is essentially the fundamental purpose for which Bitcoin was created, facilitating secure and decentralized peer-to-peer transfers. And in fact, you know what? We have previously discussed the finite nature of Bitcoin emissions and the scenario where every person in the world, currently estimated to be 780 million individuals, would need to possess a share of Bitcoin. In such a case, each person would receive approximately 0.0026 Bitcoins. Considering the current exchange rate, which is around $68,000, this would amount to approximately $183 for each individual. So imagine if you have a greater amount than that 0.002, which is the quantity you would receive. Well, that is like possessing a portion of the treasure we were discussing, derived from the ship, having something that belongs to you and is limited in quantity, and that's the end of it. There will not be any additional. So I believe that from this point onwards, until they complete their examination of the Bitcoins or in the future, if I did not possess any Bitcoins, I would exclaim, damn, I must have at least that 0.002.
And Nacho, you're so generous. So generous because there are 3.7 million we discussed lost, won't be moved again. So you are dividing 800 million by a total of 21 million in the calculation. Surely, some of those BC won't anymore. Yeah, imagine the scarcity. And you, Juan, how do you see this distribution? Well, as I said, it's striking that most is in the hands of individuals. From my perspective, it is undeniably true that Bitcoin was created with that philosophy in mind, because it is a decentralized virtual currency that empowers individuals to have full control, free from censorship, and enables seamless transactions for people around the world. But it is true that it had one more characteristic than the one we are talking about all the time, and that highlights the halving, which is that it is finite, and that it is this latter one that the market is really valuing the most, and therefore I do believe that it will evolve in the sense that many more investors will choose Bitcoin, and that will cause it to pass a bit from the hands of individuals to entities that manage larger funds.
But hey, that's my view. Yes, Nacho, it's just that one thing we've heard around here, Bitcoin is always compared to gold as a store of value, and it's true that the only certainty we have today is that Bitcoin is finite and it ends because we don't know if gold will last indefinitely or if it will eventually become obsolete like other forms of currency in the future, which is uncertain and unpredictable. Well, it's like he says a meteorite won't fall on a day with gold. It is an extremely exceptional case. They have the remarkable ability to perfectly locate gold or fabricate synthetic gold that, in the end, kind of distorts and alters the intrinsic value of gold. We are currently discussing a system that has consistently demonstrated its foolproof nature and has not encountered any failures or flaws up to this point in time. I also wanted to mention something here because we are highly interested in Bitcoins in this particular context, as you can imagine when you are dealing with computers. The topic of quantum computing could potentially have significant implications and is something we are closely monitoring. And naturally, this can pose a threat for someone to state at some point, hey, look, the Chinese have discovered a method to compromise the algorithms, and we are going to generate an unlimited number of Bitcoins in this location. Is this simply a concocted and fictionalized story, or is there some truth to it?
In theory, it is possible, but in reality, there is a significant difference between the theory and the actual situation. The reason for this is that the Bitcoin algorithm relies on a series of encryptions, which a quantum computer, with its immense computing power, could potentially surpass the capabilities of current technology. As a result, such a quantum computer could pose a threat to the security of Bitcoin. However, it is important to note that these innovations do not happen instantly, and as they develop, more robust encryption mechanisms could potentially emerge, consequently leading to the possibility of prevention. Therefore, it is crucial to recognize that the development of secure encryption takes time and cannot be achieved overnight. Nevertheless, in any case, it is an extremely futuristic assumption that we are considering at this point in time. I understand that even with quantum computing, lines of code could be updated. Even a hard fork could be done in Bitcoin, an update of the chain software to precisely protect against that attack that quantum computing could do, making it attack-proof in that sense, right? Yes, well, another possibility is that if the situation I mentioned earlier were to occur, which is highly unlikely, someone possesses that capability without anyone else being aware of it and thus unable to take action against it by implementing an additional security measure. Consequently, numerous things could be compromised to the extent that Bitcoin might not be your primary concern. We don't know if it would be the last of our problems, right? If that technology gets discovered. See this question they're asking?
One middle.
He is inquiring about the million-dollar question. Once all 21 million Bitcoins have been completely mined, what will happen to Bitcoin, given its dominance in the forever-proof test? After everyone arrives, because they will eventually depart, who will be the one to take care of it?
Go ahead.
In terms of myself, considering the fact that it's going to stay until 2140, I wouldn't be too worried from a technical perspective. One will surely respond to you.
Yes, so what is clear is that the miners at that particular time will stop receiving the rewards they currently get for mining blocks, but they will still be eligible to receive the amount that users pay when sending transactions. When utilizing the network, so they will be able to continue generating income in that way. And then, on top of that, there's also something that's been happening very recently, which are different ways that the Bitcoin network is being used. I don't know if people are familiar with the concept of ordinals. They are like inscriptions that can be made on the chain that goes beyond the usefulness it may have. It has been increasing the fees that are paid on the network, and therefore miners are currently earning much higher commissions because of that. And looking ahead, apart from the fact that there are still many years to come, that would be the situation. So miners would continue to make money. Sure, just so you guys get an idea, the capacity of a Bitcoin block is approximately 1 megabyte, if I'm not mistaken, which is about 3,000 transactions on average. So, each transaction must be associated with a mining fee that is paid, that the user pays for making that transaction and giving it priority. Currently, despite miners receiving the 6.25 Bitcoin reward, there have been instances, as Juan mentioned, involving ordinals and artifacts created using it. Well, by means of the blockchain, they are imposing larger fees in excess of the actual reward for mining the block. Envision the technological advancement and innovation that can take place by the year 2140 and the financial support that may be available for mining fees. Chain usage fees compared to the rewards you obtain from the newly generated Bitcoins that are issued as a result of the mining process. In my opinion, the halving over time is something I truly believe in. Starting from the year 2034, Michael Saylor expressed that we are currently experiencing a race comparable to the gold rush, a significant event that took place in the United States of America. In California, the gold rush, where everyone wanted gold, 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 gold. According to him, from 2024 to 2034, 99% of Bitcoins will be mined. There will be a race to accumulate as much as possible, and from then on, the fees associated with each block will become very important, and that will keep the network going forward. Yes, it's a good question. If you want, Jose, we can keep going because we have more slides. Even though Nacho has mentioned it, I believe that the current context is quite unique, and here in these paintings, I think it is well reflected. I'm unsure if you want to comment on them or develop them a bit.
Yeah, no, it's kind of what I've jumped ahead to before this context we're seeing now in 2024, the ETFs, both in US. like in London, Hong Kong, and other countries that are gradually going to approve it throughout this year, also seeing a bit the success they are having in the US. With the remarkable inflows we have witnessed in the past 3 months, which is quite intriguing considering that I distinctly recall January 10th and 11th, when this was approved and the SEC granted its approval. We were all eagerly anticipating the moment when the highly anticipated rise of Bitcoin, often referred to as the candle of God, would occur, but unfortunately, it did not materialize. What we have observed is that gradually, over the course of these 3 months, the market has been reacting to all of those purchases that have been made. In fact, many more Bitcoins were being bought than the miners could generate, and that ultimately was exacerbating the scarcity even more, and therefore the price increase that we have experienced in these 3 months, which has caused Bitcoin to break its ADH several times, reaching $73,400, which is its current DH, its maximum. On the other hand, institutional adoption, well, what we discussed earlier in El Salvador, when they started buying BTC and everyone wondered why.
Oh no.
Damn, well, now they have their accounts quite healthy. In fact, I believe that what they had in Bitcoins already surpassed the credits they had with the International Monetary Fund. They are sort of playing around with that.
Do you guys think there will be more states like El Salvador in Central America that decide to take the plunge?
How do you all see that?
Well, I am not aware, but definitely El Salvador's bet has been quite risky, and it appears to be yielding positive results for them as well, because they had a context of debanking where the population there, well, not everyone could have access to a bank account because they did not have paychecks, because they did not meet the requirements of the banks, which we all know can be abusive at times. And so what they have fundamentally done is create a wallet, an application with a government wallet that everyone can download and have their wallet and Bitcoin stored in that location. So what they have done, even though Bukele may not be the most democratic, is democratize access to Bitcoin, which is worth noting. And I'm sure there are many more countries in Latin America that are in the same boat and find themselves in a similar situation.
I believe that if there is a bull market of countries in Central America that admire and a lot of people who follow Bukele, they may take this step and form an alliance or create a group of countries where Bitcoin is considered legal tender and can be used. Hey Giovanni, what were you going to say? Pri is asking where and how to mine Bitcoin. Can you help? When do you decide to mine Bitcoin? Do you mean when we buy Bitcoin with our physical money, or is it mining like with WorldCoin where you would connect every week to collect the WorldCoin?
I think there's confusion. Can you aid us?
Yeah, if you give.
Fuck Nacho.
1, I believe it is a question that combines multiple ideas and that we need to analyze in more detail. If the process of mining Bitcoin occurs while running a software, then mining Bitcoin occurs while running that program, and what you are doing is running that program, which means you are attempting to solve a problem, and eventually, when you succeed, you receive a reward in the form of Bitcoin.
Yo,
Hardly anyone does that anymore because it is so challenging to acquire it before other experts do. Mining Bitcoin autonomously is extremely complex. The process of buying Bitcoin involves exchanging it for money and acquiring it, but it's not exactly the same as a traditional purchase. And the other example you mentioned is another completely different cryptocurrency that, if I understood correctly, is WorldCoin, and it really has nothing to do with Bitcoin. Yeah, what I would say there to give you a visual example is imagine the gold miners there with their excavators and workers extracting gold. Those would be the miners. Miners go to BME or the gold selling company and say, here's the gold. BitMe comes, says, all right, I'll buy the gold you dug up, sell it to people. Well, this is the same thing that one explained. There are some farms, there are some facilities with machines that mine that Bitcoin through the reward protocol we mentioned. They transfer it to us, and we channel it to the market. That'd be a small something to give you all a bit more of a macro idea. WorldCoin is different. It's another currency protocol. That's what one said. It's unrelated. Thanks a lot because it has actually generated a lot of confusion, and those questions are ideal to answer. Thanks for putting their sheet.
Thanks.
You were discussing earlier, Nacho, the issue of MiCA regulation, because if you'd like, we can further develop the idea of why it's a significant change for the ecosystem and for companies like VB, as well as for the perception that a more advanced and professional investor may have.
In the end, it's kind of like, this thing about not messing with money. We've had clear and blatant cases of exchanges that were in the Itzel Islands, or for those prosecutors whose owners have recently been convicted. It is crucial to understand the consequences of tampering with financial matters. The Itzel Islands have witnessed numerous transactions that involved prosecutors whose owners have been found guilty in recent times. Therefore, the fact that BIMI has its fiscal headquarters in Spain, pays taxes in Spain, and is ultimately regulated by Spanish and European laws, provides a significant advantage compared to other entities that are not subject to the same level of oversight. When I decide to invest my money in cryptocurrencies, whether it is for saving or any other purpose, what I prioritize as a user are guarantees and security. BIMI's adherence to the robust regulatory framework established by Spanish and European authorities ensures that I can trust in the safety and reliability of my investments, giving me peace of mind and confidence in my financial decisions. And in this particular case, from VB, what we do is that we make an effort to offer a safe and secure environment for our users so they can be at ease, or at least as much as possible, and have peace of mind. It is a small inconvenience. The action that MiCA takes is precisely this. If you wish to conduct business in Europe, it is essential to be registered within the European region. For tokens aiming to be listed on a European exchange, it is imperative to have all necessary paperwork in order, complying with European regulations and meeting the approved limit set by the European Parliament, as mentioned earlier, during the proceedings that took place last year in the European Parliament. During this year, diverse parts are already commencing to take effect, and it is in the year 2025 when it truly starts to be fully implemented and put into action.
Come on, this is like putting boundaries on the playing field. Before we were playing a little on a field where the lines didn't really know where they started and ended, and now we do know. And that's going to help the whole audience and the players to be able to have a better performance overall.
Yeah, cause ultimately you want to abide by same rules for all. You don't want one team to play without offside and the other to have offside.
So, as we were talking about the company here, Alex asked us a very interesting question. If at the company level with the arrival of Alvin or maybe Calvin's year, if you notice a higher number of active users or much more input with the new users. Do you, Juan, have any cash or Avi? All right, let's move on to the next company. Let's see, I'm unsure if it's due to the halving. I think the price is what's catching the most attention because the halving is like an extra layer of depth in terms of the knowledge required to decide to buy Bitcoin. What really catches people's attention is when Bitcoin goes up in price and something has happened that I'm not sure if we've mentioned in this talk, which is that never before, in any previous halving, the price of Bitcoin had surpassed the all-time high before reaching that date. And I think that's also a before and after of what might be happening. And that has caught the attention of many, and we were discussing it recently in Q1, and yes, we have observed a rise in volume and interested individuals. Thanks Nacho, Juan, Giovanni, Jose, Sleeping, and all of you watching the live and recorded broadcasts.
Later.